Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, well, I don't know what it is because it's covered up by I think it's, oh, my cell phone will tell me. Uh, May 29th? I don't think that's right. No, it's August 8th, I think. Maybe it's 9th. Anyway, uh, did I say my name? Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. And I don't know what this video is going to be about. But believe me, I'll stumble onto something and talk about it for 5 or 10 minutes and have no idea how I got there or where I'm going. But looks like the UK, I guess it's actually England, looks like they've got I've never used the word cracker. I think I've been watching too many TV shows or something. Maybe it's from watching Derby Girls or something. Cracker. Anyway, looks like they have a really good team of police officers who do escorting, special escorting, especially VIPs, the Queen, and things like that. Um, and especially, I guess they have a large team on, motorcycles. In fact, I saw a YouTube video. I've forgotten it now, but it told how they started up and how it was like wasn't an amateur. Well, maybe it was, but somebody did a cracker job of it, describing it and telling it. I think it must have been like a news or a documentary. They did a really good job of talking about it. Also, from England, I've seen a bunch of escorts of nuclear material, and I don't think I've hardly seen any in the U.S. I've seen a few missiles or something being moved on the highway or whatever, but apparently they must. I was surprised. They have so much, and like I guess it's a regular route between some nuclear power plant or something. I guess it's their, and I think it's moved by the railroad. And I've seen it moved by trucks too. Uh, they the special motorcycle team or whatever. I remember the one. That's one thing I remember from the video about this special squad in England. The motorcycle officers that do this escorting, they uh, they don't use sirens. They just use whistles, and I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos of you know from the United States, fire departments responding to fires and that type of stuff. It's interesting. Like in New York City, if I were a firefighter or EMS, I guess the police also. That I wouldn't do. I couldn't do. I couldn't put up with that stuff. I mean, the fire department in New York City has trouble just getting out of their fire stations, and then of course, New York City during the daytime, I'd have to work the midnight shift or something. during the daytime, uh, delivery trucks are just parking on the street. I mean, I just couldn't take that. Uh, I don't think I was. Well, I was a hospital security officer for 30 years. Um, there, there was a few times I had to go to another hospital to pick up. Had somebody on. They had somebody at our hospital on the operating room table, and they needed something from another hospital. I mean, they needed it. The operation is, stopped. I mean, they're there. Anesthesiologist is there and all this kind of stuff, but they needed something, and I went, but I didn't, you know, I didn't run them, with lights or siren or anything like that. And then I was, for about 10 years, a reserve police officer in a small town. And on my private vehicle, I had a red light on the dash. I was authorized, of course, but I kept like a Navy stocking cap over it so nobody would see that. And then I had a siren. And in all those 10 years, I think I only used the siren once or twice on my private vehicle, once or twice. Well, one time I used it when I was at the same time working hospital security, and the director of security made a big mistake. I don't know why he was in the parking garage as I was getting ready to go home, but he walked right in front of my vehicle as I was getting in the car, and I just couldn't help myself. I hit the siren. I shouldn't have done that. He had a bad leg. I mean, he'd been in a car accident or whatever. Anyway, he never said anything. But what if I had put him in a cardiac arrest or something? Anyway, I don't. I was in when I was a reserve police officer. I was, in very few car chases. Uh, I'm trying to think. I don't remember in the 10 years or more as a reserve officer that I ever had to escort anybody. It just, like this, or whether these guys do this all day long. Uh, I, when I was a kid, both my parents were alcoholics, and they'd usually be passed out. Well, usually my mother came home from both my parents worked every day. They never missed a day's work, but they were both alcoholics. My mother worked as a licensed practical nurse and LPN. She worked every day. She'd come home from work, come in, make herself a sandwich, make herself a highball, and get on the telephone immediately. Start with her address book, and if you're like our family that was Anderson, they were lucky. They got called first. By the time she got, our name's Howard, by the time she got to the ages, it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and she went beginning at the front of the book. She didn't jump around, and so they'd get calls, at 2 a.m. and she'd be, and if I happened to be walking by, I'd pop a TV dinner in the oven or something, because we didn't have microwaves in those days. They didn't have microwave TV dinners, She'd say, I got disconnected, and then she'd call them back. Uh, how did I go from doing escorts oh, wait a minute, let me think here. I think there was a reason. Somehow I got into that, but I don't remember how. I moved my keyboard back that's lit. Light it up, so I just did that. I was a bike patrol officer at a hospital for about a year. Actually, I was at a. Let me stop this. I don't. In fact, I'm going to switch to something else, I guess. Let me pull up something else here. I'll go to YouTube. Let's see. Let me go to the start page. Go to YouTube. Go here. Ah, what a handsome devil he is. Yeah, like I said, I worked 30 years hospital security. Let's see, when I was working out, this is okay, I worked at St. Joseph Hospital starting in 1972. That was in a bad neighborhood, the worst neighborhood, and I can say that because I actually lived in that neighborhood when it was the worst neighborhood, living with my parents, though. And out of 10 security officers, we had 2 shot. Dan, permanently disabled. About a year later, John killed, but he managed to shoot the other guy. Then the other hospital I went to work at was actually sort of in the same neighborhood, but it was over east, more 25 blocks, and that made a world of difference. There was a security officer there, Lloyd Akins, who was actually not on hospital property. He had to, if he'd have fallen down, he would have fallen down. He was supervisor on the midnight shift, and he was walking to work in uniform, armed, of course, and on the sidewalk, and a guy came up to him and said, give me your money. And Lloyd said, I don't think your gun's loaded. And the guy shot him, but it was a defective round. Lloyd had his arm up, and the bullet hit his arm and broke the skin, but it was the ammunition probably was so old that But let's see, did we have a shooting more? Well, we had a guy there who was an employee eventually, and anyway, I had just gone to work at that hospital, and the 2 guys who shot the first security officer at the hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, where I worked, one of them was working in food, after, I don't know about before, but after they shot him, he was still a patient in the intensive care unit, and the guy was, one of the 2 shooters was working in food service there, and he talked to me. He asked me, how's that security guard doing that was shot? Does he remember anything? Anyway, back to that hospital. After he was shot, how he ended up being, 2 guys came from a church parking lot into our doctor's parking lot, and walked up to him and said, is this the parking lot for the hospital? And he said, yes, it is. And one of them sprayed mace in his eyes, and then the other one shot him. And then they wrestled with him a little bit, and then when he fell down, they took his gun, and the guy was going to shoot him, And his partner said, no, don't shoot him, once is enough, you know. Anyway, like I said, well, when that happened too, a week later or less, in the newspaper, we were in Kansas City, Missouri. Uh, the newspaper said that a man at a liquor, I think it was the owner, a man at a liquor store in Kansas City, Kansas, was robbed. One guy sprayed mace in his face, and the other guy had a gun. They didn't shoot him or anything. And I told the director of security at our hospital, I said, you know, these are the guys. I said, we need to notify that this is, we need to, and actually, if you watch this, especially if you're in the United States, you're going to be saying, no, that's not, blah, 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 that's good. But Kansas City was, and Missouri was, and I think might still be, in kind of a unique situation. The security officers there in Kansas City, Missouri, have full police power on the property. And even, well, they, years and years later, even after I retired, they, Board of Police Commissioners changed the thing for hospital security officers that they could not do vehicle pursuits off of the property, I mean, you could, but not with, not, trying to use any kind of police. You couldn't run with your, lights and siren away. Well, I don't think any of us had sirens, but we did have red lights on some of that hospital. But anyway, so anyway, I told the director also what we could do, which some states I know you could not do, is the Board of Police Commission, private officers commissioning unit. They also, they commissioned, security officers, and also they commissioned, private detectives and whatever. But you didn't have to be commissioned as a private detective. We could have worked off duty, as a security officer. We could have gone and investigated something if it needed to be investigated. The Kansas City, Missouri police officers, even in their instructions, whatever they would call it, something probably, but it would be, it said in there that, well, when it said in there, that if a security officer arrests somebody, the police officer can come and, take them to jail and that type of stuff. But so far as court is concerned, unless it's something serious, if it's destruction of property, trespassing, stuff, the police officer it says, tells them you're not to go to court on that. The security officer has to go to, we need you taking care of important stuff. We don't need you spending here all day, in court for, shoplifting or something like that. But so anyway, and also it said in the instructions to the police officers that if you come upon a suspicious party or whatever, sure, you're going to, check them out. But if the person identifies himself, and you can, of course, they could check through the computer, we'd come back, licensed, security officer or whatever, private officer, whatever they had in the computer, I forget. If the person identified themselves as a security officer, I'm here for for some reason. The police officer was not to question them like, who are you watching in this building? Why are you watching this bank? I mean, whatever. They didn't give any of those specifics, but it was that was a. And if the police officer has, you're not to pursue this. If you need to contact the police officer, if you need to contact your supervisor about this, go ahead and contact your supervisor and have, it handled at another level, you know. So anyway, I had to go through that to tell you, because otherwise, in fact, still anyway, people are gonna, if you're in the United States, and maybe you have worked security someplace like I worked. This was when I was working in Kansas City, Missouri. When I worked in, well, even before I went to work in hospital security, I was working contract security. And one of the jobs I had, I patrolled in, there's my son. I bet he gets a Coke out of the Coke
Yep.
refrigerator. Making a YouTube video. You want to say anything?
No.
Okay. Nobody wants to say anything or be on video. Probably smart. Anyway, before I worked hospital security, I was working contract security. And one of the companies I worked for, at first they had me working different, you know, assignments. I worked for a while at a home for a retarded. Okay, I can't say retarded. Can't say retarded. Okay, God, I'm 70 years old. I can't say retarded. Anyway, special kids, and I worked. Then I worked, well, different places, and then I worked over in Kansas at Overland Park for a company that had a patrol service, and they knew how to make money. They had, I patrol Overland Park. I don't know how many, you know, it's 300,000. I don't know how many people. A lot. Big place. A lot of expensive. A lot of people that had money or were executives or whatever. They worked in Kansas City, Missouri, maybe, you know, as directors of security or bankers or whatever. But they lived in Overland Park. But the company hired me to, they gave me some jobs, and then finally they said, come to the office, you know. Went over there and they said, okay, we're going to have you patrol, you know, you're taking over patrolling Overland Park. And of course they gave me the list of places to check on, you know, and the times that you could set, you know, it was worthless in a way. You could set your, you know, it was just, but anyway, that's what I did. I, you know, patrolled, and I had every car dealer. The main drag was Main Street. Every car dealer had their, you know, their thing there, and they signed me up to check every one of those except for one. But so anyway, I think I got how did I get sidetracked? Anyway, oh, I was going to say too, because I worked, you know, security in Orlando, Florida. I worked in, then I worked in Texas. I worked at the air traffic control after the 9/11 thing. I worked at Love Field, and then I worked at Addison Field, you know, security for the control towers. Then I ended up in, and here in Texas, you know, security officer. You were security, you know, security guard or whatever, and you, I mean, if your employer gave you some authority to do, you know, do something, okay, you had that, but so far as, you know, then I ended up in, well, I'd worked in Florida before, but then I went to Miami, and there, a person working security, I really found it hard to believe, but you didn't even have the abilities that a private citizen had. Like you could not make a citizen's arrest. The thing for a security officer spelled out, you cannot even make a citizen's arrest. I'm sure, though, maybe not. I'm sure when you were off duty, you had the same right that every other, citizen has, that you can make, it's of course dangerous to do. Uh, I, I think I talked about that in one of my videos here on YouTube. Uh, but anyway, okay, back to Kansas City. I was working at a hospital where, the second security officer was shot, John Galegas. And I mentioned that the guy in food service, asked me, how's that security officer? No, that was the first security officer, Dan, that was shot. And they had he was still a patient in the hospital. For quite a while, because his pancreas was, he shouldn't have been able to, he shouldn't have survived it. He was just lucky. Normally there would have been at 9:15 p.m. there would have been the ER doctor there at the hospital, and that would have been it. But a heart and chest surgeon had come in because he wasn't feeling well, and he came by to pick up some medicine for himself. Another doctor had came in and had just delivered a baby, and so he was there, and I think that was it. And so Dan would not have made it if they hadn't have been there, so luck was on his side. Anyway, now I've mentioned this before. When the first security officer, when Dan was shot, I'll go through this again. I should be, okay. Here. I wish I could set that up automatic to change. When the first security officer was shot, when Dan was shot at 9:15 p.m. in the Wabash parking lot, when the hospital administrator, who by the way was black, only hospital administrator in Kansas City that was black, but then this hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, was in the black neighborhood. When he came in and parked in the doctor's parking lot, I went over to the hospital administrator and I said, his name, and I said, there's John, or there's Dan Staggers. I'm not sure I did with Dan Staggers. I mean, his blood was there, but I went over and I said, now are you going to do, well, you need to do something. And I told him what they needed to do, and he just, I forget what he said then. I don't remember. I remember what he said later. And he just like blew me off, like went on in the hospital. And, but I told, I said to him, I said, if you don't take the following steps, if you don't get bulletproof vests for us, if you don't put a gate across there to stop people from being able to come in through the church parking lot, and something else. I said, this is going to happen again. Next time it may not be a security officer, it may be an employee, it may be a patient, it may be a visitor, whatever, and he just walked on by me. So then about a year later, at 9:15 p.m. in the parking lot, a guy came through from the church parking lot where there was no gate, gate had been put up there. And John Galegas and him both saw each other. Well, the guy came in and started breaking into a car. Actually, it happened to be John Galegas' car. I don't usually mention that because some of this stuff is so, like if I tell you that, would you believe it? But it's, John Galegas was Mexican, but I think it was actually like Indian. I mean, American Indian or Mexican Indian or, whatever. And every year he would take stuff down to Mexico. He'd load his car up and he'd take stuff down there, stuff for them. And he had his car. He was getting ready to go on vacation, and he had that stuff in his car. And this guy came in and went over to his car and started going through the stuff, I guess, or something. It was 9:15 p.m. They both saw each other at the same time. They both threw at the same time. They both shot each other at the same time. If John had had a bulletproof vest on, he'd have been fine. But he didn't, and he was dead when he hit the ground. The other guy was shot. The other guy managed to jump over. The reason we didn't have, well, that was having two security officers shot in that parking lot was not good. But that we didn't have cars broken into or anything because of, there was two ways to get into that parking lot. You could drive in or walk in through there. And that was supposed to be the only, except there was this church next to us. And there was no gate there. So you could get in that way if and that's where he came through. That's where the other guy came, the other two guys came through. They came through there. He managed, the guy who got shot, managed to jump, and the rest of our parking lot had an extremely high fence, and at the top had this ribbon type razor stuff all the way around it. No other hospital in the greater Kansas City, no other hospital would put that kind of fencing around their place ever, because they didn't want people to see it and think, it looked like a prison or something. They wouldn't do it. But the nuns, at St. Joe Hospital, did it. Let me jump away and try to remember to bring me back. Anyway, I was working at the hospital I went to shortly after John Gallegos was shot. When I went to work there, and then, a year or so later, when CB radios are being stolen, like, everybody, it was just, CB radios were being stolen out of cars, like, it was unreal. The director of security there, I was walking down the hall, and he just got off the phone with the director of security from St. Joe Hospital, where I had actually worked. And Mr. Ross, the director of security where I was working there, that goddamn lying son of a bitch, oh, Jim! And he said, come on in. I went into his office. You worked at St. Joe Hospital, didn't you? I said, yeah. Actually, I had not worked for that director of security. He came in right after I left. But he said, that lying son of a bitch, he says that they're not having CB radio stolen out of the car. And you worked over there. And I said, yeah, he's correct. We never had a CB stolen out of the car. It has a fencing all the way around it with razor, wire around the top of it. We had a couple security officers shot, but we had never had a CB radio or anything stolen out of a car. And Carter Foss, that was the guy's name that took, right after let me back up a little bit. Okay, when John Gallegos was shot, the second security officer, when the hospital administrator pulled into the parking lot, I went over, actually Eugene Segan, one of the best Kansas City, Missouri police officer, and one of the best police officers, everybody I think, of course I don't know the guys, from what I saw and whatever, the way you'd want all police officers to be. He pulled up there. John Gallegos had been shot the night before or whatever, at 9:15 p.m. And Eugene worked the day shift. I forget the zone. I used to be able to remember the, the car number or whatever. Police car number. Or, the radio number for that area. And Eugene worked, worked. Anyway, he pulled up and I went over to his car, and he said, I never did. He said, Jim, get in. And I just stood at the window, And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about John." And I said, "Yeah." We talked for a little bit, and I didn't say anything, really. I mean, he said he was sorry, and that, whatever. And then he said, "Jim, what are you going to do?" And I didn't have any plans, but I knew, And I said, I don't know what, I can't remember. That's been 1974 or something, I uh, I don't know exactly what I said. And then the hospital administrator pulls in, and I said, Eugene, I got to go talk to the hospital administrator. So I went over. He got out of his Lincoln Continental Mark IV, and I said, I think his name was Dickerson. I think that was his name. I said, "There's John Galegas's blood now in the parking lot right there." And I said, "Now, are you going to do something?" And he said, "Maybe." He said, "Maybe I'll get you guys a horse." And then he laughed and walked away. And then I went back over to the Eugene's police car, and I don't think I actually told him what I don't. This is a long time. I may have said, "Oh, I just." He said he was, he laughed and said he's going to get us. Oh, I don't. I might have, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And then that parking lot there was during the daytime was the doctor's parking lot, and the afternoon shift could, your visitors could use it and stuff in the afternoon. And then the first doctor pulled in. They parked, there. So I said, I got to take care of this. And then I think he got a call, Eugene. And then I went over. Dr. Piper, there's John Galegas's blood. I just talked to the hospital administrator. I talked to every staff doctor who pulled in there. And I got different responses from them. But it was different than I got from the hospital administrator. I said, we need a gate put across here, and we need bulletproof vests, and then the hospital administration needs to talk to the security officers to see what else needs to be done. And every one of those doctors went straight to, I didn't say go to administrate, I just said we need, this or whatever, and the doctors, they went to the administration office directly. Some of the doctors said, "Jim, how much do the bulletproof vests cost?" I said, I don't know, doctor. And he says, "If need be, I'll buy them." And another doctor says the hospital will, buy them. Another doctor came in, I'll take care of this, whatever. And then after about an hour and a half or whatever, the assistant administrator of the hospital came out. And I never saw him that he wasn't within kissing range of the hospital administrator's ass. I was surprised to see him. Yeah, he's coming out. The hospital administrator's still in there. Why isn't he down on his knees, is what I was thinking, giving him a blowjob or something. That's what I was thinking, I didn't say that. Not that they were gay. I don't think they were gay, but just, I'm trying to give you a little color, flavoring, you might call it. So he comes out, the assistant administrator, acts like he wouldn't make a good act. He didn't make a good, I don't think he made a good hospital administrator. And I don't think he'd make a good actor, because he came out, acted like, I'd never seen him coming out, looking at the birds and all this kind of stuff. Like he didn't want to look at me, and he didn't want to make it look like he was coming out to talk to me. And I just waited for him, okay, And then he said, "Oh, Jim, by the way, we're going to get a gate and put it across here, and we're going to get bulletproof vests for you guys." And then he said, "I guess I don't need to go to my car." and then he went back inside. So it took them a little while. The nuns probably were crying so much because of, not because of John Gallagher, but because of having to pay for, well, I doubt they had to pay. I think probably the medical, uh, the doctors probably paid. But, so I waited. It took a while before, and then, then the 3.5 years I worked there, I mean, we would have to take the Cushman scooter and drive over, across the street to put gas in it occasionally or something like that. But I never, in those years, that was the first, of course, that was the first hospital I worked at. I, like, not like other hospitals I worked at later on. We never went anywhere else. We also didn't do snow removal. All we did was security. We didn't do snow removal. We didn't jump start cars. We didn't do, and, but anyway, the only time I ever made a trip away from that hospital was when, administration told me go over to Law Enforcement Equipment Company. They got an order there of bulletproof vests, and pick them up. So I went over. So there was 10 security officers. So there was 10 bulletproof vests. But I didn't put one on because I knew that I wouldn't be working there very long. I knew that the hospital administrator and the assistant administrator didn't do anything but kiss the. See, I'd worked. I started out life as a welder, boilermaker, and ended up, building railroad cars, and then I worked worked on a refinery in Louisiana, Convent, Louisiana. Then I got hired into the post office, and I quit those people after a while. Told them to take this job and shove it. I didn't actually say that, but everybody was there. This is, a civil service job, a lifetime appointment. I said, goodbye. And then I worked as a welder building trucks, and worked several jobs, mainly. Then uh, had married a woman, and she started a tropical fish shop, so I ended up having to work in the tropical fish shop, and then other jobs. Worked all my life. Usually worked 2 jobs, but so back to St. Joe Hospital so I stuck around long enough to get the bulletproof vest, but then I knew that they were going to fire me the first chance they got, and I wasn't going to give them. So I went over and hired in at a different hospital, security. I worked a couple of days there at the hospital, second hospital. I worked a weekend. I think I worked a Thursday and a Friday. I might be wrong on that. And then I worked Saturday and Sunday with another security officer. And he'd been there. He'd worked there for like forever. A black security officer, and he'd been in the retired sergeant from the Air Force. Real nice guy. And so we were working. Oh, that's a different story. No, I guess it isn't. So Saturday, I ended up arresting 3 guys. It was a Saturday. The surgery should have been closed. I was working with Walter. That was his name. Real nice guy. And we were outside together, and the operator called and said, call such and such a number. And Walter said, that's surgery. He said, I'll go check. See, I wouldn't have known that was, he knew the extension, And I saw, well, just before that, we were together, and three guys came, they were like 18, 19, came out of the hospital front door and kind of took off like running, And Walter said, they've done something. And I said, just maybe young people. And then the call came. Call extension such and such was kind of unusual. Walter said, that's surgery. And I said, I'm going to grab those guys. And Journey Lutheran Hospital was an interesting thing. It was built like, there was like a cliff, there was this ramp or a street that went down. It was just interesting. It was, I could tell a million stories. Anyway, I went, the guys, they were young. I was sort of young, but, but they were about, I'd say, a half a block or a block away from me, down at the end of this hill. And I said, hey, well, I don't forget what I said, Hey, you guys, what's going on? Nothing. I want to talk to you. Just stop for a second. So they stopped, which they just should have kept walking. With me with the walkie-talkie and the revolver on and all that kind of, I wouldn't have been able to catch up with them. Hell, I wouldn't have been able to catch up with them if I hadn't had that. If I'd have had on jogging shorts, probably, they were a few years younger than me. But they stopped. And then on the radio, I heard Walter, stop them, Jim, stop them. They stole some stuff from service. I mean, he was yelling on the radio, and I turned the radio down so that they couldn't hear him. And I said, I need to talk to you guys. And they said, no. And I said, of course, I'm walking towards them, and they're standing there, and it was like, why won't you talk to me? Well, we saw a dead body. And I said, well, dead body won't hurt you. And then I got down there, and before I got there, I didn't see them, but they had thrown the stuff they threw, down. And so I got them. Anyway, meantime, Walter was trying to get me on the radio, and I had turned it down because I didn't want these guys to take off, And so Walter called the, police department, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, they have, or had, on the radio, it'd be like, dispatch, to whatever, no, nothing, no beep. Then there would be, beep, 132, one beep, I forget what a beep. And that would be trespassing, shoplifting, or something like that. And then there would be, beep, beep, and then the, dispatch would call, alarm, Main Street Bank or something like that, or, armed robbery, something. And then there was beep, 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 assist the officer needs assistance, blah, blah, blah. And even if I didn't hear, the beeps or the police radio, I would have known if I was outside or someplace, because when that happened, every officer, and from a way too far, every officer, like when Eugene Segan would be there at St. Joe Hospital, and I'd be out there talking to him or something. And then sometimes a call would come in a few times, he'd be talking and beep, 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 go along with that, beep, 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 assist the officer, and he'd drive over the curb, I could hear siren, you could hear sirens, every police officer was heading that direction. A little bit of, I don't want to say overkill, but anyway, so Walter called the police and they put up beep, 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 assist the officer, Trinity Lutheran Hospital, 31st and Wyandotte. Officer, I forget what it was, officer in pursuit of somebody, people that have robbed, I forget what it was. So anyway, I got these three guys into the hospital and into a room there, and then the police, 5 or 6 of them come in, nightsticks and everything else. So kind of embarrassing. They didn't say anything, they just took these guys away. So anyway, the Sunday, the next day, Walter and I are working together, and I get a call to go up to the 3rd floor, 3 East, I think it was, and get off the elevator, and a guy in a suit or whatever says, are you hospital security? I said, yes, yes I am. He says, I'm with the narcotics unit, or not unit, narcotics unit, Kansas City, Missouri Police Department. I'm here about the arrest. Did you make it? Yeah, yesterday, yeah. And I said, well, I just need to go over here and check, see what the nurse wants at the nursing station. He says, you want me to come with you? I said, yeah, fine. We go over there, and the nurse says, I said, you called? She said, yeah, a guy asked me, she says, a guy reached in and grabbed some medicine right here, They had some medicine, right? They had the nursing station and then some medicine there. And he reached in and grabbed some medicine. And she said, I asked him, can I help you? And he said that he was looking for the bathroom. And I said, where, And she said, I told him, right over there. And then I said, well, where is he now? She said, he's in the bathroom. So we went over, and when he came out, he was arrested by the Kansas City, Missouri narcotics. Anyway, so that was my first week at this new hospital. And pretty good way to start when the director of security came in, and the reports were on his desk. That was a good way to start, my new job. Anyway, remember the hospital where John Gallagher was? No. It would be, okay. John Gallagher had been shot, but about a year before that, Dan Stagel had been shot. And I told you that I talked to this guy from food service department, an employee there, and he asked me, how is that, how's he doing? Does he remember anything, everything? Well, I saw that guy from time to time, I'm not sure he asked anymore about, since he worked in food service, I guess he probably knew how he was. He could just look to see who's a patient in room such and such, but. So anyway, I went to work at Trinity Lutheran Hospital, about 25 blocks over. And it wasn't the first 4 days. I'm not sure if it was even maybe the 5th, or probably Monday. So it probably would have been like a security officer had to be at this parking lot between 1 and 3 on the weekdays, 1 and 3 p.m. So I was new, of course, and Walter or whoever said, somebody has to be there. I said, I'll do it, So there was no shack or anything there. So in the summertime it was hot, and in the wintertime you were freezing your ass off, because that hospital was like on the top of a big old hill. Anyway, I was there, and the car pulls in, of course, and guess who it was? The guy from St. Joseph Hospital, from food service, who'd been so concerned about and wanting to know information about Dan Stagel and how he was doing and if he remembered anything. And I had noticed that when, I don't know when he quit, because we weren't buddies, what I mean. I kind of forgot about him, And anyway, he pulled, up there at the gate, and he says, "Jim, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I came over to keep an eye on you, keep track of you." And he said, "Okay." And he went and went in, and he immediately quit. And so after they shot, I don't know what they did before that. After they shot Dan Stagel, and I had tried to talk our director of security into, hey, let's, let's notify Kansas City, Kansas police because of a liquor store, and they sprayed the guy with mace, and you know, and I said, let's get the word out that if you shoot a hospital, if you, if you assault or shoot or whatever a hospital security officer, that there is going to be, we're going to, and it shouldn't be just us, be all the hospitals together, we should, and the director of security he was a good director, well, he wasn't he was a good guy. He couldn't, his hands were tied at that hospital. The nuns would not spend money, they didn't want to spend money for security. They wanted to send money to their mother house, they wanted to send money to the Pope, they wanted to send money to the local diocese of the Catholic Church. They wanted to do everything but not spend money for security. And of course they needed money for security. But anyway, the director of security, and he may have known something that I did not know at that time, because that thing where the Kansas City, Kansas, that was another state, and it was another city. There was Kansas City, Missouri, where I worked, and there was Kansas City, Kansas, and I had not heard good things about the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. In fact, my second job, welding, building railroad cars, I spent a year working doing that, and I quit on my anniversary day because it was so cold or hot or whatever that after I worked a few months there on my second job, or 6 months or whatever, at some point I was underneath a railroad car, welding overhead on the railroad. I came in, that's what I did every day. And at some point I just started, okay, I'm going to quit this job. This sucks, for a lot of reasons. And then I started telling myself, okay, I'm going to go in today and I'm just going to work until it wouldn't be new, I worked night shift, I'm going to work 4 hours, then I'm going to quit, and then I'd be there, okay, I've been here 4 hours, I'll finish the day out, and then, and I did that. It was like, and then I realized, okay, it's been, this is my anniversary date. I have worked 1 year, and that was it. I went in, worked, and then I quit. But during that year that I worked there, I got a little education. I was underneath this. It was unusual to ever, there might be another guy working on the other end, but we didn't really. I mean, during the wintertime, they had a barrel out there, and you could take your 15-minute break or whatever, but I didn't, we had a fire and everything, so you wouldn't, I would leave when the wintertime, my feet felt like they were frozen and stuff. Kind of funny, you're welding and you catch fire, but you're freezing, But anyway, I was underneath this railroad car and welding, and there was another guy there welding, and it was break time, so I took my hood off or whatever, and I thought, and anyway, he did too, so we were, and he said, well, he said, I used to be a Kansas City, Kansas police officer. And I said, oh. And He said, yeah, and I can't use the word that he said. Yeah, we'd arrest these, I'll say N word, you know. Is that the right word to use? Yeah, we'd arrest these N people. And we had a flight of stairs there at the police station. It was just amazing. They would all fall down the stairs and injure themselves. And I thought, oh my God. And he said, yeah. He said a couple more things like that. And then he said, well, I probably won't be here tomorrow. He says, I used to work for the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, and I got fired. And but I've been uh, asking the chief to hire me back, and the chief said that come see him tomorrow, and he'd let me know. Maybe he'd, hire me back. And he says, so you may not see me here. This may be the last time. I said, well, good luck. I don't know what I said. I didn't. Hopefully, I didn't say good luck to you getting a job. I didn't see him the next day, so I'm guessing he got hired by the Kansas City. And what I didn't know was, and now this director of security at St. Joe Hospital, the guy who was a retired Kansas City, Missouri police sergeant, and a nice guy, but he couldn't do much because the nuns they would not spend money for security. Uh, and so all he could do is just, have us be there, and that was it. So I couldn't get him to get a bunch of us to, I'm kidding, get a bunch of us hospital security officers to go find these guys that did this, and I wouldn't have done something. But anyway, what I found out later was that the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department, they hated security officers. I guess because they took jobs away from police officers, that the police officers wanted to work off duty. And, I don't know what the deal was, but I don't know I can't remember all the details. Well, even then, I don't think the news media gave all the details, but there was several stories about two Kansas City, Kansas police officers. There was some bar over there that was, I guess, a real popular bar. And again, I can't remember all I didn't even know all the details then. But these two Kansas City, Kansas police officers, they had some kind of a problem with a guy who worked, a black guy. They were white. And they had some kind of a trouble with a black guy who worked as a security officer, actually a bouncer or whatever, same thing, at this bar. And these guys there was shit going on, and the newspaper or the TV stations never fully explained what everything was that was going on. But these two police officers, I'm surprised that they did that, but anyway, they were off duty, and they went to this bar where they'd have both of these guys that had major trouble and threatened. I'm not sure if they threatened each other or if it was just threats from these off-duty police officers. But they locked their guns in the car, and they went on in and immediately got into it with the bouncer for that club or whatever. And there was an exchange of words. And I'm not sure if they both went to the car or if just one of them went to the car, got his gun, came in, and boom, boom, shot and killed this guy, this bouncer for the bar. And so I don't remember all that, but so maybe that's what Lee Coleman. Let's see, was that Lee Coleman, the director of security at St. Joe Hospital? Was that the director of security or the chief of police at Raymore PD. I can't remember. Anyway, so maybe that was it. So, so the two guys who shot Dan Stagel and went to Kansas City, well, then we found to figure, those were the guys. They went to Kansas City, Kansas then, and sprayed a guy there with mace, and they had a security officer's gun, I'm sure, in addition to the gun they already had, but they didn't shoot the guy at the liquor store. And then, not long after that, a few blocks away from St. Joseph Hospital, the first hospital that I worked at, where the two security officers were shot, they shot and killed a security guard who was working at the bowling alley. And then a few blocks away from St. Joseph Hospital, there was an off-duty Jackson County Sheriff's deputy working off-duty there, as a security, doing security work, and they robbed the place and they shot and killed him. And then the police caught him eventually. And, I think, hospital security officers get shot, a guard, for Pinkerton or Burns or something like that, making them, 10 cents above the minimum wage or something, gets shot and killed. Off-duty police, off-duty Jackson County Sheriff officer gets shot. They catch him. They catch the guys. And that's when we found out. So, guess this was story time. After you, oh man, this shirt, it's holy. This is what I should wear to church or when I have the baby. It's a Duluth t-shirt. They make really good, they're kind of expensive. They make really good t-shirts and other things. I own a few of these, and it's, and they make a long, I forget what they call it. Is it plumber's t-shirt? I forget what they call it. It's longer, so if you're a plumber or if somebody else and you're bending over working or whatever, somebody's probably not going to see your ass crack, whatever. But they're nice shirts. I've had this one quite a while. I'm not sure where I got the holes. I think my, yeah, you can, I don't know if you can see it or not, the discoloration or whatever. I think a whole bunch of bleach was poured, because there's a couple other spots on it. Anyway. I noticed that it's this one, this one I made yesterday. And look here. 1080p, 60 frames a second. And the audio is in sync and everything. I need to update this, this area in here. I'm using Manicam. Let me drag this over. Here's my Manicam control panel. This this helps out a lot. I can I can see my audio up here. I can see the video. I can click here, and of course this is what this is what you're seeing. And I think these all three are the same now. Yeah, they are. Need to go up and need to edit these, but right now I'm hopeful that, and this is, I told it to record it 1080p, 60 frames a second, and that looks like what I got. So I'm hoping the there's the Elgato microphone that I'm using, and I think I have it a little too far away. Anyway, let's see. No, we don't want to disclose. Well, we don't want it in the microphone here, but so I do need to work on. Then I guess I need to. Oh, let me bring this over, by the way, so you can see this. Now, when I'm actually doing the video, this is the controls for, but when it's actually being used, I don't have access to all of the settings, but I do have access to the brightness. And the contrast. I'll hit the restore defaults here in just a second. Let's see the hue. I'm not going to worry too much. Saturation. Me, red face. Okay, that's racist, right? Sharpness. Okay, now I'm going to hit the. Okay, now we're back to. I think maybe the brightness needs to be kicked up a little bit here. Okay. Now there's advanced. Okay, see, there's almost nothing here. But if I were not doing the video, there would be a whole list of and others that I could use. So these are the only things that are available to me when I'm actually doing the video. So it's nice having two monitors so that I can just sit here and tell you stories, right? Let's see, YouTube Studio. I've got 3,058 subscribers. I get about 17, as you can see underneath it, about 17 new subscribers a month. So somebody can do the math for me. Remember I told you the other day about my math ability. Actually, it was my math abilities in when I was a junior in high school. actually about me not having any math ability in high school. Uh, but you can do the math, so I get about 17, even round it up, make it 20. Let's say I get 20 subscribers. We'll make it, instead of 28 days, make it a month. I get 20 new people. So how long is it going to take me to be like one of these guys that has, 100,000 subscribers or something like that? How long will it take me? And keep in mind that I am 70 years of age. So you think that I'm not going to have I'll be, uh, cremation. Unless my family drags me out of the yard and lets the stray cats eat me or something. Um, I'm kidding. Uh, how long before I will, let's see, well, I get one of those plaques from YouTube, that I can, they can put in the coffin with me or something? When will, so. Last 28 days, 7.9 thousand views. Uh, wow. Estimated revenue for the last, okay, that's an improvement. This has been running like $13, something like that. Estimated revenue, wow, $40. I just spent for this camera $170. Let's see. This is the first 18 hours, and that changes, and 15 minutes compared to your typical performance. And, it's been up a little bit. Here's published videos. The last, it shows you some stats about that. Oh, my top videos for the last 48 hours are these 3 videos. My stomach is growling, and wasn't I just eating something in front of you, or? Latest post. Latest post. My ex-wife just bought 3 more. You may be seeing them. Our living room is filled with firewood. Now, not firewood that, that somebody goes out and brings in what do they call it? These are the type of firewood that is, the special firewood that burns it, it's easy to light and it burns for about 2 or 3 hours. And she just bought 3 more boxes of that. The living room, half of the living room is filled with this firewood. Now don't worry, this is not firewood this is in the boxes. So I think what I'm going to do now is, and it's going to hurt my back and everything else, is bring them. They were in here for a while. I'm going to bring some of them back, and it's going to be like a shelf. I'm going to make a shelf various places, and I can put some stuff on top of the for storage, and get it out of the living room, because it fills up about half of the living room. My ex-wife, her desk is there and her computer, and then there's this firewood, and then there's a thing over there that sits when it rains a certain way here. This apartment water, water comes in. Not all the time. It has to be, and they've tried to fix it. And it's still, it still comes, I don't know how it's doing. We're on the ground floor, by the way. There's one apartment above us. People just moved out, I believe, because I could hear them. I can always tell because there's some like concrete steps with metal that that holds the thing, and when people move out or in, they're using a dolly or something where they're like boom, 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 and then I can tell my son or something, somebody's moving out, and that's what I heard the other day. Um, 1 hour and 13 minutes is how long I have been talking. Anyway, I put back my Razer keyboard because it's lighted, and my other keyboard that I had here, which is I really like, except it's not lighted, and I just have to have lighting, even though I told you I'm a touch typist. I mean, I can do all that, but if it's something like a symbol, my fingers may not go there. I have another lighted keyboard. That's a Logitech or whatever. It's in the closet. The other day, my ex-wife, it was yesterday, she said, "Oh, my mouse is not working. I need a new one." And it was like, "Oh, I need a mouse. What am I going to do?" It was like, no. I said, that's not a problem. I took her a mouse got in my closet. I took her a cheap old mouse. I think it was, what was it? Anyway, and she doesn't know how to hook something into USB, doesn't know what USB is. She put it in. It just doesn't work. It's too, so I said, I'll get you another one. So she takes it out, and I just throw it in the trash. I go bring her another one, She plugs that in. It doesn't work. I said, don't worry about the cable, just give it to me. And I just threw it in the trash. And she said, what are you going to say? I said, I'm bringing you the old ones. I'm bringing you the cheap ones. And I said, I hope that I'm not getting into my expensive good stuff. And so finally I brought her one that plugged it in, and it worked, I think. Or did we throw that one away and get another one? Okay, she's okay right now. But now if she needs a mouse, she's going to, oh, no, the mouse I gave her then was one where you put the dongle in. First one she's had that, I was like, where's the cable, She put the dongle in. And then I checked it. Well, I didn't check it, but I told her, I said, well, this takes 2 AA batteries, so they may. And it doesn't work, And I said, just a minute. And then I put, 2 new charged batteries in it, and it works. Now, if she needs another mouse, then I'm getting into the good stuff. I don't want to think what I ought to do is order a cheap mouse just to have it, and it can be in the box. And oh man, my arthritis is killing me. Where's my medicine? Oh wait, this is from last night. It doesn't have my naproxen in here, but this is the 9th. Okay, my drops on the floor. I'm not worried. One's on the floor. I don't know which one it was, but I'll make up for it here. I mean, I won't make up for it. I mean, it's like if it falls on the floor, I'm not taking it. I mean, I'm not even going to bother to replace it. But I am going to take an naproxen. I think I told you in the past that, and I was an adult, well, when I got married at age 26. I could not swallow a pill. And I'm not the brightest person around. Of course, there was no internet. How could I? Well, I did tell you about ordering as a kid and a young adult. I ordered from the government printing office. Got manuals on everything, and I read them and studied them. But there wasn't any, I don't believe, there was no internet, of course, and there was, I don't remember any government printing office, how to take a pill. That's not usual, but when I was 5, I can remember, I had to take a pill. Well, I went to the doctor's office. Well, I didn't go. My mother took me to the doctor's office, and the doctor, gave me a pill and told me to take that pill, and I spit it out. And he was not too happy. But I think I had to take the pill, I don't remember that. Maybe I blacked out, But my mother and for that year, for kindergarten, I'd be like 5 years old or something. That's the only public school I went to. And I can remember my mother. Have you ever seen the things on YouTube where somebody tries to give a dog a pill or something or other? I can remember my mother and the heavyset landlady, Mrs. Hannah. My parents rented a room from her for like a year, or maybe less than a year, and then they bought a house. I can remember my mother pushing a pill or pills into my mouth, putting her hand over my mouth, Mrs. Hannah sitting on me or whatever, and I don't think I took the pills. But now you can look up on the internet how to take a pill. I can remember as an adult, and it was like I got married at 26, and it was after that, going to the doctor or something, and doctor writing out a prescription, and I said, can you make that for a liquid? Or can I crush it or whatever? And something the doctor, made it as a liquid. They have to end this. I mean, not my life, but I mean the video. Anyway, I went to the pharmacist, gave him the prescription, And he said, "Is this for a kid?" I forget what it was, but you know, because the strength or something would have been too strong or something. I said, "No, it's for me." You know what the secret is, don't you? It's not a secret, I guess. I think all those years, I would take a pill or pills and then fill my mouth with water and try to swallow it. And the pill would, I guess, float around in my mouth or something, and I'd end up with a soggy pill, or if it was a capsule, the coating material would melt, or something. I'm gonna have to. Anyway, the secret is take a sip of water, a little tiny sip, and then swallow. But as you can see, maybe this is comedy. Maybe you, maybe you'll tell your friends, "Hey, you got to watch this guy. He's a comedian." I made a video here a few years ago. It's on YouTube, someplace, and it was Fort Worth. If you're out of the country, well, if you're out of the country, you probably know. If you're in the UK or some other country, you know more about politics in the United States than most of the American people do. You know more about our history than most of the Americans. You know more about our geography than most Americans, But anyway, well, we're in the southwest part of the United States, Texas. A little storm came through, snowstorm. A little bit of, about this much, just barely a dusting, and maybe a little bit of ice, a little bit of, and I thought, walking and talking YouTube video, this is going to be, and I knew so I left here and walked down to the Main Street Camp Boy down there, and sure enough, the cars were sliding. There weren't many cars out. They were sliding all over the place. The bank, the Wells Fargo Bank, stayed closed all day. And a dollar store, I forget which one of it was a new one. And they were people here. I live in West Fort Worth, and about 5 miles as a rocket flies from what used to be Carswell Air Force Base, a SAC base, Strategic Air Command. And now it's a Joint Reserve Base, so they have some stuff going on, but the reserve units of the Navy, Aviation, Air Force, or not, let's see, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, I guess. Would that be it? Anyway, they go over there, and it's a base for them, and they fly. Anyway, there was, that's what I was going to say. They built up a lot of apartments and quite a few things, I guess, before I came here. And for for the SAC base. And you'll hear Carswell mentioned. I've watched like some YouTube videos, and they talk about, nuclear bombers loaded with, nuclear bombs were, airborne, flying around the edge of the USSR at that time, ready to, and doing things. And I think I might be wrong. I can't remember the exact details. I watched a YouTube video about it. I think the History Guy maybe channel, good channel, and one of the aircraft that was flying out of Carswell here. Can't remember if it was the one that accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb on the east coast of the United States, or if it was the one that dropped a bomb on a nuclear bomb on Spain. Can't remember. Ugh. Did you see the news that, and I can't remember the exact code, not that it matters, but we had these, like if you watched War Games, that movie and stuff like that, we have, in fact, when I lived in Missouri, on my scanner I could pick up, I forget which kind of missiles they were, but they had those in the Midwest, underground silos, that you'd be driving down a highway and it'd be, I'm sure a sign would say, no trespassing U.S. government property or something like that, and you wouldn't see anything because it would be a silo underneath the ground, but it was guarded by the, Air Force, military police or whatever, but there wasn't a bunch. I saw a video about that too, real life, video. I mean, there wasn't. I think there was 2 or 3 guys that might be outside, and they switched off, and then there was. I'm talking about the security people, not the 2 guys that were in the silo or whatever. And there'd be like one inside, and I guess all the fences had little. I think there was things on the fencing that if they moved, and there was things on the ground if if some cow or something comes through crumping along, the vibration was in it. So those poor Air Force guys had a very important job to make sure nobody, because there was like maybe 3, 5 of them or something at a time there, and then the 2 guys in the silo. But how did I get on this subject? Yeah, it came out. This is top secret. And these Air Force guys, other than the one that, other than the time that I think it was it in Arkansas, where somebody was doing some work on a missile in the silo, and he dropped a wrench, and it exploded. That you can see that on the History Channel or the History Channel. But anyway, these I forgot the. Stop coughing. My throat is sore from coughing. Where was I going with my story? Can't remember. I guess this is a good time to quit then. No, I know what it was. No, okay. Anyway, this area was built up for this Carswell Air Force Base. Apartment complexes were built for all these people, strip malls with eating places and all that kind of. And then it was cut down from, to a joint reserve base, which was like, fuck. Well, we can't close this place down. We got too much investment in it. But the main thing is we can't close it down because congressmen and the senators or whatever, won't like it. So we've got to, do. Well, so it's going to be a joint reserve base. But anyway, the people leave. And cut down to much smaller. So there's a whole bunch of apartments out here. For some reason, the prices, the rent just keeps going up and up. That should be like supply and demand, but I guess. But there's a lot of strip malls that are, a lot of, Oh, so everybody was kind of happy because in this strip mall that's right over, half a block from here on the corner, there's hardly anybody in there. I could name, there was a dance place that took a bunch of place, you know, a bunch of places, and they had their windows open, and you could, it was, uh, you know, older people learning ballroom dancing or something like that that go to the Walgreens, which is at the end of the thing on their separate corner. I'd look in there and I'd see these very, very few people in there, doing whatever kind of dancing they do. And I thought, this place is not, they're going to be gone. Sure enough, they were eventually gone, and those places have never been, they're still vacant. Uh, when I moved here, there was a inexpensive store there, and they had some really good deals, except like any little store. Well, one they only had like two employees. The most they had were two employees there. One at the cash register, and then one to do the stocking. That was not enough. And then the other thing I noticed was uh, expired products. Even like over the little had a little tiny area. They had some aspirin hanging up and some, I don't know, Benadryl and who knows what. It wasn't a pharmacy or anything. And I'd be looking for something, and I just expired. I took. But they had some good deals, and I forget what it was that like bulk, burritos or something. Forget what it was. And, then after I was here a while, eventually they went out of business. But a dollar store opened up, there, and there's a bunch of dollar stores. They've done really well, and they actually, I think some of them changed the thing a little bit, but it's kind of, I haven't been in there in a long time, but you go in there and everything is priced at $1. I think there was some canned goods. They had to, they couldn't charge $1 for a can of beans or something, so they had to charge less. But so anyway, everybody in the neighborhood, I think, was waiting for them to open up, and the company, this dollar store company, their headquarters was in Canada, northern, cold, probably. So we were waiting for the store to open up in this little ice storm. That was the day it was supposed to open up, and the little ice storm hit. No big deal. But I went out and I had wasn't cell phone at that time. It was I think one of my Panasonics or something. And I'm out there and I see these cars, doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm saying, look at these people from, Fort Worth, Texas. They don't know how to drive. They don't know how to drive on a little tiny bit of ice and snow. It's just comical watching these people. This is pitiful. I'm from Missouri, I come from a state that raises corn and cotton and cocklepers and Democrats, and for all the eloquence, neither convinces nor satisfies me. I'm from Missouri. And then I slipped and fell on my ass. I kept making it, I had trouble getting up. So, okay, the comedy, we've been going now for an hour and a half with my comedy routine. And my stomach, I think, is still growling. And so I'm going to end this. I thank you for watching. If you can use my Amazon link below, or as I have told you, if all you have to do also is just go here to Jim. There you go. Can you see it up there? Right there. JimHoward.me. If you do that, you go there. But you don't have to look at I need to update these and change them, in fact. I haven't been there, I haven't checked these in a long time. But anyway, you're at Amazon. It's a secure link, by the way, too. That Jim Howard, that was, HTTPS for secure. And it brings you here. And then, please go here and buy a Mercedes, a big screen, expensive television or whatever, because I'll get a commission. Not very much, but well, I can show you. Isn't this wonderful? I'm not charging for this education, by the way. This is all entirely. Here is my payment history from Amazon.com, because you went. And here at the end of this month, I'm going to get from Amazon, because of you people clicking on on the link. All you have to do is come here. You don't have to use those links. Just come here and do a search for most expensive item Amazon sells or something, please. I'm kidding. Anyway, at the end of this month, I'll get $12.62. Last month, I got $13.46. The month before that, I made $7.62. And the month before that, I made $5.20. And the month before that, I made $36.01. Month before that, I made $3.29. And the month before that, I made $84.95. And I remember making a YouTube video thanking you all who were clicking on the link below. And I thought, I'm going to be a wealthy man. I'm going to be rich. Actually, I thought if I could make $100 a month from Amazon, it wouldn't pay for the $170 camera, but by the way, if you're going to buy something, this is what, Igloo or what? Yeti. This is really nice. I'm sure there's others, but it's a Yeti. Where's the camera? There's the camera. Can you see the Yeti? Oh, wait a minute. It's over here. It's in, oh, I see. And this is, there you go. It's on both sides, but Yeti. And it's, aluminum or whatever, and you can set different kinds of, I tried several different items. It doesn't have to be a cola can. It could be something else. And actually what I do is I put a Coke in, and then and put it in there unopened in the refrigerator. Or you can do it, but this is better because you take it out and it stays much, because this thing is, I do recommend that. My daughter bought that for me, and then she bought me, where is it? I think it's in there. And it's like this tall, and what I do is I put, it's, stainless steel. And I put ice in it, and then I pour my Coke into it, and it has a, and I've forgotten before and left that thing, with the lid sitting here and gone take a nap, wake up, and the ice is still in there. So anyway, think of what you can buy. Anyway, I'm taking back that thing, by the way. All of you people who heard me say, thank you for using the link. No, I'm taking it back. I found out that it was a friend of mine and my daughter and myself I actually get credit, I think, for when I click on something. So we're the ones that. Anyway, thank you very much for. Wait a minute. Let's go back here to. No. Okay. Let's go back to. Very rare. Metropolitan Police Specialist Protection. I think I told you, I don't remember ever escorting anybody. Never had it. I was in a few car chases, 100-mile-an-hour plus. One of them, the people had been out it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, and the guys have been out in the country breaking into people's homes. I think they have to be brave. With everybody armed, they were breaking into people's homes like 3 o'clock in the morning and stealing stuff, including guns. And we just happened to have a full-time officer on eventually, and I would stay over as long as I could. And so he'd have somebody because, with him on the midnight shift. And I was a reserve officer, and I could come in when I wanted to, and I could leave when I wanted to. I did the same day for years. I think it was Sunday, and I was the only officer on duty, of course. And but anyway, I stayed over. But anyway, so he started a car chase, 3 a.m. in the morning, and years later, I found out, and anyway, I was coming in towards them, and I was trying to get where I could get them to turn, but I couldn't get there. I only had a short distance to go, but I wanted to get them so that they would have to turn down or crash into me, would have to turn down a road, and then they couldn't have got onto the highway. They would have gone down I forget what it was called, really a country, and but I couldn't make it in time, and they were coming straight at me, and I was going straight at them, so I moved over, and then they went by. What I found out later, years later, I was working with a guy at the local hospital there, working hospital security, and this guy was an X-ray tech, real nice guy. I mean, really nice guy, and a young man, and he said, do you know any of these Belton police officers? And I said, well, yeah, they come in the hospital, quite often. And I said, I know some of them. And he says, back years ago, I was just a young, teenager, and I was with this guy, and we were out here breaking into homes and stealing stuff. And he said, then the police, the Belton police started chasing us or whatever. And I asked him, I said, no, that wasn't a Belton police, that was a Raymore Police Department. And I said, so you were coming, on at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and you were westbound on 58 Highway, that's, right over in. He says, yeah. And I said, well, do you remember the police car that was coming straight at you? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, that was me. And I said, I got out of your way. And I said, of course, we ended up, and you went, you went on the highway, and you went, through Grandview and into Kansas City, Missouri, and whatever. He says, yeah, he says, the guy driving, when you were driving towards us, the guy driving says, shoot him. And he says, I didn't want to shoot a police officer or shoot anybody. And he said, I told him, I said, my gun doesn't have any, bullets in it. And he handed me his gun. And I took his gun, he says, and I threw it out the window. And I said, wow. I didn't know that. Anyway, thank you. What's the moral of that story? Moral of that story is that Jim can make a video for an hour and 45 minutes and not say anything. Or Jim would make a great comedian. Or Jim is an idiot. Who knows? Oh, remember the lady I told you about when I was in kindergarten? And the lady that, Mrs. Hannah, that my parents rented a room from, who, sat on me and get me to take a pill. I'm sure, everybody should have a tetanus shot, especially if you're somebody working, if you're a working person. Maybe not a working person. Well, everybody should have one. And when you go to the emergency room or doctor's office or whatever, it's going to be like, have you had your tetanus shot? I always made sure I kept a tetanus because I worked building railroad cars, trucks, got my head split open one time. I was working on a truck. We had hard hats, and I took my hard hat off, and a C-clamp came off of the top of a truck where the guys were working, cut my head open, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, I spent 30 years working hospital security, a lot of the time in the emergency room. And one of the questions was, have you, you come in, no matter what you come in for, have you had your tetanus shot? And I think it's like for 10 years, I believe. Then you need another one. And they'd say, well, you need your tetanus shot. And they give them the tetanus shot. Mrs. Hannah died of tetanus, lockjaw. She died of it. My mother, I told you, who was an alcoholic and who had this phone. In fact, I have the phone directory, her phone directory. Not that I'm saving it, it's just that I thought I need to go through this just to make sure. My mother kept diaries. Every year I would buy her a nice diary, and she would write in it all the time. And when my mother passed away from Alzheimer's, there was her stuff to get rid of and everything. There were all these diaries. And after she, a few days or whatever, I went in her room and flipped open the diary and started, looking at it. And I thought, and I just took them all and threw them in the trash and got rid of them. And I wonder if she'd been perhaps putting gold coins someplace. I'm kidding, but I didn't want to read what she had put, in there. I don't know that she ever said anything bad about me, but I didn't want to read what was in there. And it wasn't because of the Alzheimer's. It was because of everything. I thought, but now there was a reason. So anyway, my mother would call Mrs. Hannah and talk to her. And remember, this was, we lived in that room there when I was in kindergarten. And I can remember, by the way, she was a seamstress, and she took in boarders. And she had mannequins, around, and the needles and stuff stuck in them, that kind of stuff. But I think my parents must have been telling me as a, kindergarten, don't make any noise, we're just renting this room, don't make any, And so I had nightmares of falling down the stairs, and like it was a 2-story place, but I had nightmares that I was falling down the stairs and made noise, and that was my nightmare. But anyway, uh, Mrs. Hannah eventually died. She started raising worms to sell to be used for bait, for people going out fishing. I'm not sure if she just sold it there or if she had some bait shop and she took them there or whatever. She raised worms. And I guess she got a cut on her finger or something, rather, and she got lockjaw. She got tetanus, and she died. And so many years, well, it was many years later she died, but finally, I can't remember. A few times I asked, like, a doctors or nurses or something, I said, do you know, have you ever heard of anybody, did you know of somebody who died from tetanus? No. And I said, I do. And they, wow, you know somebody who, yeah. I said, yeah. And I tell my little story. And see, you got the story for free. I charged those people for it. I'm kidding. I have to say, I just started doing that for this video. That's one of the problems I've had is I tell the truth about something, or I say something, especially with a boss. The boss will say something and I'll say something, back, and it's kind of my sense of humor, but nobody can tell that it's my sense of humor. And then the boss wouldn't realize it, and I wouldn't say, just kidding. And especially then when the boss would say something like, if you don't like it, you can get out of the department. You can just get out of this department. I'm not having you. And he'd go on and like that, and I would just add to it then, I wouldn't say, I was kidding, I would just add something to the thing. I don't know what I'd say. Usually, I didn't get a chance to add something to it because usually the boss would go crazy and his blood pressure would shoot up, and I wouldn't say that I would, and that was not actually not I've talked about that a few times before. That was not a smart thing for me to do, but it was just something that the way I made the DNA, and I couldn't, when somebody went, ballistic over something I said that was a joke, and when they just went like that, instead of saying, sorry, Mr. Ross, I'm just kidding. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean I was actually going to report you to Congress for perjury before a congressional committee. I never said that. That thing came up, but I didn't. When the guy, the director of security at this hospital was a very smart guy, but I've talked about him a lot. He'd have been so easy to use. I mean, you could do it, by flattering him, and I never did anything like that. And in fact, I kind of went the other direction. But anyway, he comes to me and he says, Jim, he says, I'm going to be testifying before Congress in Washington, D.C. And I said, wow. And he says, yeah. And he says, did you know that if you testify before Congress, you have to supply them with, what you're going to say written out, and send it. I said, I didn't know that. I said, I don't think I'll ever be testifying before Congress, but I don't think I'd want to have to write something out that I was going to say. I'd be very happy to say something, but not if I have to write it out, And he says, yeah, you have to. And he says, this guy, this congressional person, committee person, or, whatever, not a Congress person, but, he says, he's been doing this for years. He's the one who gets these things and gets them in, reviews them, and that kind of thing. And he says, this is the best, you know. He says, this is the best he's ever seen. And I said, wow, that's something. That's amazing. And everything. Um, Actually, that's the time that I used my humor. When he told me that, we were standing in front of the security, one of the three security office, and that was the one where the secretary was sitting, and that's one where the lieutenant was sitting, and we were in the front of right there at the door. And he said that, this is the best thing he's ever, and then I was getting ready to go home. And I said, Mr. Ross, I said, there isn't anybody who has to tell us, what you are and how you are. We all know, all of us know just exactly I forget exactly how I put it. And then I walked away, having a trouble almost, wanting to, and then I heard him, Mr. Ross, telling the secretary and the lieutenant, see, Jim knows. Jim knows how I am. He knows what I am. And so the next day when I came to work, the secretary was sitting there and the lieutenant was sitting there. And I went up to the door, and then they started laughing, and then I had trouble. I was laughing so hard. I didn't mean to tell that story, but I just happened to remember it because Mr. Ross went to Washington, D.C., and he testified before a congressional committee. And there were three of them testifying. One guy was director of security at something. The other guy was director of security for a nuclear power plant. And the other guy testifying was Mr. Ross, my director of security. So anyway, Mr. Ross, oh, Jim, my testimony, I want you to, this is, they print it out, and here it is. I want you to read it. This is what I said when I was in. And I said, Mr. Ross, I'm busy. I got stuff I need. No, Jim, go, yeah. I want you to read it. And I said, but how about me do it? No, now, I want you to read it now. And I said, oh, okay. And I opened it up, and I said, and he's waiting, I said, Mr. Ross, I'm sorry. I've got to do this. What? And I said, well, you committed perjury before a congressional committee, so I'm going to be reporting you to Senator Stuart Symington for that. And he goes, what? And he goes, I don't care. He just went, and instead of saying, Mr. Ross, I'm kidding, because I knew what happened by reading, I think I told you in one of the other videos that from grade school, I didn't, last year of grade school, I had to go to summer school because I couldn't spell. Now, the reason I couldn't spell was because of my hearing loss in both ears, really bad. It made complicated things. And the nun at Redemptorist High School told us all, the reason you can't spell is because you don't read. If you read, you'll be able to spell. And I was thinking, sister, I bet you I read more than you do, and I bet you my reading level is more. That's what I was thinking. So I spent the summer for summer school there, reading, and at the end of each thing there was a test that told what your reading level was, and some other stuff, and my reading level was very high. I forget, what it was. It was very high. I didn't have any, So with this testimony before Congress, I could see right away when I read this, little, thing. there was a director of security sitting at this table. There was a director of security for nuclear power plants, and there was Mr. Ross sitting there. And I could just, in my mind, see Mr. Ross would be looking around to see where is the camera, and be looking around to see if he, who he could say that he saw and that kind of stuff, not paying attention, the way he should. And the uh, senator or congressman who was asking questions asked uh, I forget what the third guy, the third guy would be. I forget what, but anyway, this guy says, you know, and I forget what it was. So this, the first director of security, what would it be that was really, because I think he said the same, anyway, he tells, okay, our people are armed with such and such, and we have X amount, and we have to do this and everything. And then the guy goes to, well, no, it wasn't because okay, so this guy tells his thing, and it's kind of impressive, but no more maybe impressive than hospital security. Then he goes to the next guy, and this guy is in charge of security for a nuclear power plant. Nuclear power plants are generally built away from people, away from cities, and where they have, area around the thing, and the security is vital for those kind of places. We're not talking about protection from shoplifting or vital. And those guys they have to be, probably it varies with countries or what, in the United States I think the security there for these nuclear power plants, they have to have the capabilities to hold off an armed terrorist attack for 30 minutes, and I may be off on this, for 30 minutes until, the sheriff's department and the Metropolitan Police Department and FBI and everybody else can respond. They got to be able to hold out. So they're armed with, assault rifles and everything that you can imagine. So anyway, the guy says, we have to be. And then the member of Congress or whatever, and I'm sure Mr. Ross, knowing him, he must have been, oh, there's a camera over there. Hey, I wonder if I'm in this video. And then what about you, Mr. Ross? And you're a director of security at a hospital. He says, yes. Ours is just the same as, these other two guys. In other words, he was saying that we were armed with assault rifles and, I don't know, grenades and all this, all this kind of stuff. And so that's what I brought up. And I'm sure Mr. Ross was smart enough. When he saw that, when he got the copy of the thing, he probably thought, oh, God. Although the way he was, he might have thought, okay, it's in the congressional record, that we are, and maybe he contacted his, director of security buddies, hospital, and said, look, we carry flamethrowers or bazooka, I don't know what it was, but whatever I said, set him off, and I never said, oh, I was just kidding, because he went, go ahead and report me to the Congress or whatever if you, get out of my department, you, SOB and blah, 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 And I didn't say, Mr. Ross, I was just kidding. Never told him I was kidding. Anyway, 2 hours. Okay, this is it. Thank you for watching, and have a good day. Just don't do what I did to my bosses. Don't think you can do that nowadays because of, well, actually right now it sounds like from the news that people are needing employees because of the virus and what have you. Thank you very much for watching.